Welcome to these video series that are complementary to what you're learning in your master course. Let's begin with a basic and key question. What is sustainable development or sustainability? Now, there are some nuances between these two terms, but I'll get to that by the end of the video. For now, let me treat them both as synonyms and ask you again, what do they mean? Well, if you ask different people or look into different sources, you're likely to have different answers, and that is because there's no single universally accepted definition. But after several decades of using these terms, I think that we can safely say that sustainable development or sustainability have become three things: an ideal, a set of principles and goals, and an academic field. Now, the first two are the normative framework of sustainable development, and the third, the study of that framework. Now, you can think of it as where we want to be, what we need to do to get there, and the study of all of that and how to implement it in reality. Now, let's explore the first of these meanings in this video, sustainable development and sustainability as an ideal. Well, when we look at the profound impact that human beings have had and are still having on natural systems, for example, by emitting large amounts of greenhouse gases, releasing chemicals into the environment which pollute water and soils and change the chemistry of the atmosphere, by altering the natural flows of nutrients, seizing large quantities of fresh water, altering landscapes, and driving many species into extinction, it is clear that such impacts cannot go on indefinitely without great consequences on ecosystems and, of course, on all of us. Now, in fact, these impacts that I just mentioned relate to what is known as planetary boundaries. Now, these are 9 environmental pressures that, if uncontrolled, if not kept within certain limits, could push planetary conditions outside of the stable period in which we are now. These 9 pressures are climate change, our release of noble entities, stratospheric ozone depletion, atmospheric aerosol loading, ocean acidification, changes in the natural flows of phosphorus and nitrogen, freshwater change, land system change, and our impact on the integrity of biodiversity. Now, for more details on these, please check the publication of Richardson et al. Referenced at the end of this video. But without going into too much detail, let's look at the big picture. Now, these small circles here represent a safe level of impact. In other words, keeping human pressures within these limits keeps humanity within a safe operating space. Now, these bars show where we think we are now, and as you can see, we have already exceeded several limits, which means that currently we are at a high risk of pushing planetary conditions outside of the environmentally stable zone in which humanity has thrived. Now, what exactly are we talking about? Well, here we have a graph showing how the temperature of the Earth has changed in the last 100,000 years. Now, this short period of just 11,000 years, called the Holocene, is a period of remarkable temperature stability, which is an indication of relative environmental stability. It is here, in the Holocene, where we developed agriculture and our modern societies, and this is the only stable state of Earth that we know that can support both. But now, because of our actions, we may be leaving this stable zone with unknown consequences. And at the same time that we have been causing all these environmental impacts, human population is rapidly approaching 8 billion people and is likely to continue growing for several more decades. Humans now inhabit almost all regions of the planet. Our economies are larger than ever in history, and yet our world is a world of fabulous wealth and extreme poverty, a world in which there are large inequalities in well-being and in access to resources, both between and within countries. So clearly, all of these are unsustainable aspects of human societies, as they erode both the natural systems and the social cohesion that they depend on. Hence, we think there should be another way, a way of living, a way of doing things, in which humanity is in an ideal state, where there is shared prosperity and well-being and a harmony with natural system. and a state that therefore can be sustained indefinitely and hence is sustainable. Now, such an ideal state has been described as an equilibrium between economic, social, and environmental goals, the so-called three pillars of sustainable development, or as a thriving economy embedded in a healthy society and within natural limits, or you may say now, within planetary boundaries. Now, people picture such an ideal world very differently, ranging from a highly modern future driven by technological innovation to a more ecologically centered one driven by voluntary simplicity. And of course, many versions in between. Now, whichever it is, you may think of sustainable development and sustainability as a kind of utopia, a guiding vision for change, and indeed, a very needed one, since we know that our current way of living will have to change sooner or later. Now, having said so, let me now emphasize that sustainable development is not about saving the planet. In the course and in the chat, we may discuss why this idea is not only misleading, but a dangerous way of framing the problem. Because you see, our planet will continue existing for several billion years, and life in it is likely to persist despite our terrible impact on biodiversity. What is at stake is not the planet, but us and our societies. That is not to say, of course, that we should not care about other species. If anything, to become sustainable, we must acknowledge that humans are part of an entangled web of multi-species structures, and that we highly depend on these structures. We even are multi-species systems ourselves, since our own bodies are home to and depend on numerous microbial species. But let's not lose sight of the fact that, along with reconsidering our relationship with the biosphere, rather than saying let's save the planet, we should say let's save us and our communities from the effects of our own actions. In a sense, let's save us from ourselves. Now, to conclude, let me now address the differences between these two terms, sustainable development and sustainability. Well, there are at least three different interpretations. One is that sustainable development contains sustainability as one of its pillars. And that is because sustainable development is said to be the ideal state that combines economic prosperity, social inclusion and cohesion, and environmental sustainability. Now, another interpretation is that sustainable development is the process or the pathway through which we achieve sustainability, the goal. Another interpretation is that sustainable development, because of the terms development in it, is rooted on the idea of economic growth, and so it aligns with approaches such as green growth. While sustainability is not linked to the idea of growth, and so it aligns more with strategies such as a steady-state economy or degrowth. Now, whatever definition you favor, let's at least agree on the basics. Sustainable development and sustainability are these guiding visions that try to answer the question, how should we relate to one another and to nature going forward? Now, this is the key question that all of us alive today must answer and agree upon quickly.